This program is about unsolved mysteries. Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials have participated in recreating the events. What you are about to see is not a news broadcast.
In 1884, one of the wealthiest men in New Mexico built his wife the finest house money could buy, a glorious Victorian mansion. But after the couple's youngest daughter died, the lady of the house turned into a virtual recluse, and a lot of folks say that her spirit has haunted the mansion for nearly a century. Tonight we'll take you along as a team of real-life Ghostbusters tries to flush the elusive ghost out of hiding. In March of 1988, the head of a multi-million-dollar drug ring named John Roubas was assassinated just outside San Juan, Puerto Rico. Or was he? Authorities now suspect someone else was murdered in his place, and that Roubas is very much alive. Legend has it that nearly 150 years ago, wealthy citizens in old Los Angeles buried their riches for safekeeping during the Mexican-American War. Is there still a fortune in gold and jewels hidden in the shadows of LA's downtown skyline? Also a heartwarming update. Thanks to your calls, a family has been reunited after 45 years apart. Join me. Perhaps you may be able to solve a mystery. This is the La Posada Hotel in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Nestled within its adobe walls is a 100-year-old Victorian mansion. Recently, that mansion has become the focus of an unusual high-tech investigation. No crime has been committed. No one has been hurt. No one has disappeared.
It's important to look at thresholds as soon as we walk in as well.
Believe it or not, this team of investigators is looking for a ghost.
So far, the information we have regarding the La Posada Hotel, it appears to have all the characteristics of what is referred to as a classic haunt. Because of the history, because of a variety of different types of witnesses who've had this experience, it certainly appears to look that way, that it is a classic haunt. We're trying to approach it very unbiasedly without any expectations. So at this point, we're not sure exactly what we're going to find or what we're going to encounter.
If Christopher Chacon and his team of real-life Ghostbusters do encounter a spirit at the La Posada Hotel, she probably answers to the name Julia Staub. Folks around here say Julia's been haunting the place for nearly a century. Julia came to Santa Fe from Germany around 1870 to marry Abraham Staub, one of the wealthiest men in New Mexico. Abraham promised Julia he would someday build her the finest house money could buy.
Mazel tov.
7 children, and 14 years later, the Staubs moved into Santa Fe's first Victorian mansion.
Look at the beautiful parlor that Papa has made Mama with her favorite flower in mind. See the rose stained glass?
When Julia moved into this house, she became the queen of Santa Fe society. All major affairs were held here.
Come, let me show you the rest.
They entertained dignitaries from the government, President Rutherford Hayes, General Sherman, Governor Wallace. Big parties were held here, and one would think she was a very happy woman.
In the new house, Julia and Abraham were blessed with an 8th child, a girl. But tragically, the baby would live only a short time.
I'm so sorry.
According to Betsy Sollitt, Julia's joy turned to sorrow overnight.
Take care of her.
She was so distraught over the child's death, and it's said that she didn't eat or sleep for 2 weeks. And when she finally slept and she awoke and looked in the mirror, all of the beautiful black hair on her head had turned completely white. All of the grief went into her hair.
According to legend, Julia Staub withdrew from society and was rarely seen outside her mansion. When Julia died at the age of 52, she seemed far older than her years. In 1936, the Staub mansion was acquired by the La Posada. Eventually, the modern hotel was built around it. The front door of the mansion is reached through the lobby, and the Staub home is as elegant as ever. The rooms upstairs, including Julia's bedroom, can be booked by hotel guests. And Julia, over the years, has had a way of making her presence known.
I think there's something here. There's no doubt. I mean, too many people, including guests who know nothing about the history of the place, say there is something. Whether it's a ghost or whether it's some sort of energy, I don't know.
The mansion itself was built back in 1882, and it's the first formal brick building built in Santa Fe.
Chuck Barone was a hardened skeptic until 1991, when he and a desk clerk took several guests on an impromptu tour of the
It
hotel.
was Julia's room herself.
Even though Julia's room was not occupied, hotel policy required the clerk to knock anyway.
I'm in here.
I just said nobody was in there.
I'll go double check at the front desk.
He went downstairs. I stayed up with the guests, and nobody came out the front door. It'd been several minutes, and by then, anything I was thinking about may have passed, because I figured that there was a guest in the room.
Let me try. Security.
Curiously, the clerk had returned, confirming that Julia's room was not booked.
Hello?
And then so he knocked on the door again. Nothing happened. We went in, and the room was empty.
Nobody here, great.
I swore I heard something.
The windows were locked from the inside. Nobody'd come out the door, and I really have no explanation for it.
Around a year later, Chuck's son, John Barone, who also worked as a security guard, had his own weird encounter when he checked the men's washroom at closing time.
Security, locking up for the evening. It's time to go.
I looked in the mirror, and there was a face, like a reflection. I felt a cold chill come through me, and something told me it's time to leave. I left. I didn't turn off the lights. I didn't turn off the hall lights. I didn't check the female's restroom. And I proceeded out the back door, and I didn't come back.
I feel that it is real. There is no doubt in my mind, because I saw someone standing there, looking down at us. And, before then I was not a believer, but, once I saw her there, I believe that she is present here.
No, ma'am, everything is fine. Ross, will you turn the TV off?
This past June, Ross Weisenhofer and Holly Knorr were in Santa Fe to attend a friend's wedding. Even though they stayed in the room across the hall from Julia's, Ross and Holly had never heard any of the stories.
We shut the TV off, and at that time I was up, and I was trying to go back to sleep, and my eyes were closed. And at that time, I felt something staring at me. I saw the white apparition. I put my head down and, I'm like, my gosh, this isn't happening to me right now. And then I looked up again for the second time, and at that point, it started to become more defined. I put my head back down, and, when I looked up the third time, it definitely was Julia standing there.
Ross, what is it? Ross, what's going on? What is it? What are you doing?
And at that point, I jumped up out of bed, flicked the lights on. I said, we're out of here. Within 5 minutes, we were down at the front desk.
I've never seen him like that. I've never seen him scared, especially enough to have goosebumps. He was definitely a skeptic before, and then once he saw this happen, he was a believer. So I was quite surprised.
So this was your room then?
Yes, it was.
All right.
Just 2 weeks later, Ross and Holly were back at the La Posada to talk to Christopher Chacon from the Office of Scientific Investigation and Research.
Was it getting brighter when you had the image, or was it just getting thicker?
At the hotel, Chacon's team of Ghostbusters included a physician, a psychologist, and an electrical engineer.
I looked up. It was getting more defined.
Where would I be in relationship to where you saw this?
Their goal, to determine whether the hauntings here can be explained in scientific, rational terms.
Would be about here?
No, she was closer.
Closer?
Yeah, almost like right on.
Of the 800 investigations, haunts, and poltergeist phenomena that I've been on, 70% of them appear to have rational explanations for them. We have found definitively answers. However, there's another 30% which apparently we cannot find a rational explanation for. They define the known laws of nature and physics, at least as we know them today.
What it might kind of remind you of. Would you take a look at that and just tell me what comes to mind and what you can see in there?
An important part of each investigation is a psychological evaluation of the subjects.
Breaking bad news or bringing bad news to the family.
Pull your arm back toward you as hard as you can.
Next, the subjects undergo a physical examination to eliminate any possible somatic causes for the sighting.
One of the cases that come to mind is one situation where a woman had a brain tumor pressing against a certain part of her brain, which would cause these seizures. And it would create the illusion, at least to her, that some type of entity was coming and having physical contact with her. When we get to the aspect of the case where we're looking into the environment, we begin to take samples of the water, samples of the air. We take elements that the individual would actually have physical contact with, pieces of carpet with the wall, paint on the wall. We're looking for toxic elements which could somehow affect them.
We'll check the blueprint as well.
For example, certain types of phosphine gases, when mixed with air, can produce flashes of light. And some might see this as poltergeist phenomena, when in fact it's obviously rationally explainable. After examining the environment, if we don't find anything which is obvious, we will then proceed to set up equipment in the environment to do a long-term surveillance. We would have specially designed radioactivity monitoring equipment. We look for electrostatic discharge of any type. We would look at the magnetic fields, both electromagnetic fields and geomagnetic fields. We would analyze the spectrum of light from infrared to ultraviolet and everything in between.
The environment, in this case the upstairs rooms of the Staub Mansion, is sealed off for a period of 12 to 72 hours.
That's affirmative, Alan. Go ahead and stand by for that.
State-of-the-art monitoring equipment, worth more than $500,000, is set up in an adjacent area.
Read out in millirems.
The team then returns to the environment, armed with special thermal cameras which measure temperature variations. Finally, the room is plunged into total darkness. The team uses a most advanced night vision equipment to examine the environment.
We have floors that are lopsided.
At the end of every investigation, the team sits down together for a case wrap-up.
Something that people can perceive. You know, there are no air vents. We were able to analyze the environment in every possible way. And we did not encounter anything which was unusual or extraordinary.
No vision and hearing trouble.
Okay, psychologically, I think in terms of behavioral profile, I see.
The examinations performed on Russ and Holly prove that they are in fact very credible witnesses.
Well-functioning individuals. I see no evidence of any suspicions there.
Based on all the results of the investigations we've conducted here, we haven't found any facts to disprove the fact that the La Posada is haunted. There certainly then is that possibility that there is unusual paranormal phenomena taking place here.
Christopher Chacon and his team do plan to return to the hotel at least once more to search for definitive signs of a haunting. In the meantime, if you should find yourself in Santa Fe, if you should check into one of the rooms in the original Staub mansion, it might not be a bad idea to leave a single red rose on the windowsill. After all, rumor has it that it was Julia Staub's favorite flower. When we return, the puzzling death of John Roubas. Did a cunning drug lord stage his own murder to evade capture? March 7th, 1988, San Juan, Puerto Rico. Flames consumed a late model car that had apparently been abandoned in a remote quarter of the city. The next morning, local authorities found the remains of a body charred beyond recognition in the back seat of the car. The only evidence that might eventually lead to an ID of the victim was a fragment of jawbone and 4 loose teeth recovered from the ashes. 1 week later, an anonymous informant told police that the dead man was John Roubas. It was a name authorities knew well. John Scott Roubas was a ringleader of a multi-million-dollar drug network. Headquartered in Puerto Rico, the Roubas operation had a virtual monopoly on cocaine and marijuana distribution in the Midwestern United States.
We were able to obtain dental records from John Roubas's dentist in Florida, and we shipped those dental records to a pathologist in Puerto Rico who had found in the burnt automobile 4 loose teeth and a piece of a jawbone. That pathologist identified those loose teeth as being those of John Roubas.
For years, Roubas had eluded law enforcement in several countries. Now fire had apparently accomplished what the law could not. John Roubas was out of business. Or was he? It began with a few whispered rumors. But in the months that followed the grisly discovery in Puerto Rico, authorities began to suspect that the fiery death of John Roubas was in fact a cunning hoax, a ruse to avoid prosecution. Tonight, in an exclusive interview, a former member of the drug lord's inner circle claims that John Roubas is very much alive and as busy as ever. The sprawling empire of John Roubas operated with military precision. A fleet of small airplanes ferried tons of cocaine and marijuana from secret plantations deep in the jungles of Colombia, Panama, and Jamaica. The flights converged at the island of Puerto Rico. The drugs were repackaged and then shipped into the United States through Milwaukee and Chicago. Between 1981 and 85, Roubas slipped an estimated $30 million worth of drugs into the U.S. The Roubas operation was a model of efficiency. At prearranged times, illicit cargoes arriving from South America were dropped just off the coast of Puerto Rico. Small boats were already in place, waiting to retrieve the drugs.
In most cases, Roubas had hands-on with the drug trafficking, where a lot of the higher echelon drug traffickers normally would stay in the background. Roubas came to the foreground and actively got involved in the distribution process.
The drugs were brought from the beach to a hidden processing plant in the Puerto Rican highlands. There, the large bundles were broken down into 1-pound packages that could readily be smuggled into the U.S.
John is one of the craftiest guys I've ever met in my life. And his ability to smuggle drugs into the United States unmolested. You know, he had several years, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years of successful smuggling with no type of wiretapping or anything.
Don't get funny with my stuff.
You know, he ran a real stiff organization.
Hey, Pablo! Pablo, come here!
Roubas was very ruthless. That's typical of the drug business. You have to gain your respect through fear, and Roubas was very good at that.
Well, I've got a problem.
In one notorious incident, Roubas supposedly became suspicious that one of his pilots was running his own smuggling operation using a company plane.
And I see that it takes you twice the time, using twice as much fuel. I get nervous.
Yeah, but we have the problem.
Sit down! Bad problems.
Hey, John, you got the wrong man here.
Yeah, that's right. I got the wrong man.
Mr. Roubas.
Abre la boca! Abre la boca! What do you think it would take for me to pull the trigger, huh? What do you think it would take? Oh, what do you think it would take? Go on, get out of here. Get out! Get out!
Roubas ruled with such an iron hand that it took investigators years to penetrate the organization, locate the hidden processing plant, and close in on Roubas himself. By December of 1987, authorities in the United States had enough evidence to charge 37 members of the ring. Every one of them was arrested, every one but John Roubas. He seemed to have vanished into thin air. 3 months later, the charred remains were identified as Roubas based solely on the 4 teeth found at the scene. In the United States, the outstanding charges against Roubas were dropped. In Puerto Rico, police uncovered a vendetta that had apparently led to the murder of the fugitive drug lord. Donald Kurtzer, a former associate of Roubas, was convicted of masterminding the hit. Allegedly, Roubas was killed in retaliation for raping both Kurtzer's girlfriend and the 14-year-old daughter of Kurtzer's housekeeper. According to Puerto Rican authorities, the night of his death, Roubas arrived at the airport in San Juan. He was met there by 2 women, one of whom was ultimately convicted in the case. Although he rarely drank, Roubas was said to be heavily intoxicated.
We're so worried about you.
Worried?
Honey, I miss you.
Explaining that they had an unexpected errand, the women drove their passenger to a deserted area on the outskirts of town.
Hey, where are we?
Cálmate, cálmate. Mira, ahorita regresamos y tú te estás aquí, ¿ok? Vámonos, chica.
Hey, baboso!
Officially, John Roubas ceased to exist. Officially.
Yeah, what's up? It's John. John, where you been?
But a few months later, his former associate Richard received a call from a dead man.
What do you mean?
I mean, it's not a good time to go down there right now.
All right, I think I know what you're talking about.
Right, they closed down the old house. A lot of the people have been picked up.
I have no doubt about it being John Roubas. You know, we had an acquaintance, you know, over an extensive period of time. So, I mean, you know, I'd know his voice anywhere.
We also began to receive information through some various other of the co-defendants that had been charged in the case, that perhaps Roubas was alive, that they had seen him, that they had talked to him. And what was reported to us was that one of the defendants' wives had received a telephone call from a person that she identified as John Roubas.
Yeah, listen.
I'm sorry things are not.
Authorities have another reason to believe Roubas is still alive. He was simply too smart to let himself be trapped.
Yeah, just tell him I'll make it up to him. I promise.
John Roubas, in the business he was involved in, illegal narcotics, was a very suspicious individual and took a lot of precaution to protect himself. He never traveled alone, and when he did travel, he always traveled armed. So the facts that were put together just did not fit well with what we knew of John Roubas.
Two people have served time in Puerto Rican prisons for the murder of John Roubas. But was Roubas truly the victim, or was someone else assassinated in his place?
Roubas was fully capable of staging his own death and may well have had his own teeth extracted in order to accomplish a false identification of a body. And I believe that there is substantial reason to believe that John Roubas is alive.
It wasn't he could have. He did pull it off. I know John pretty well, and John is a very mystique type of guy. One thing that he would never do is corner himself in a situation where he couldn't get out. He always had an exit that most people didn't know about. The bottom line is that John Roubas still rides.
When we return, surprising discoveries in a treasure hunt near downtown Los Angeles. Spanish doubloons, royal jewels, chests of gold. In our experience, there's nothing like an old legend of buried treasure to lure otherwise sensible folks into the wilderness to risk their lives. While these tales may be rich in history and folklore, we've learned that they don't usually amount to much when it comes to actually finding anything of value. That is until we heard about the buried treasures of Elysian Park, 575 acres of hills and secluded canyons situated just 2 miles from the heart of downtown Los Angeles. In June of 1994, Unsolved Mysteries brought in a team of historical researchers and high-tech surveyors to follow up age-old rumors of buried gold and jewels that would now be worth millions.
Okay, good line.
Incredibly, the sensitive instruments revealed that the legendary treasures of Elysian Park may, in fact, be real. It seems hard to believe that 150 years ago, Los Angeles was just a dusty pueblo, a quiet outpost in the northernmost territory of Mexico. But that way of life came to a sudden end in 1846.
Antonio.
War had erupted between Mexico and the United States. According to stories handed down over the years, well-to-do Angelinos panicked as American forces drew near. Some dug elaborate escape tunnels. Others buried their family fortunes for safekeeping.
Es el broche de mi madre. Yo sé, Carmen, pero tienes que ser fuerte. Ahora es momento de poner las cosas.
This was the best thing that they could do to protect their valuables at the time, and it was a customary way because there were no banks. If you wanted to protect something, bury it, hide it.
Muchachos, ayúdenme con esta caja.
Elysian Park was the most logical place for people living in the Los Angeles area at that time to bury treasure.
Through the years, stories circulated that some families never came back and that their treasures were still waiting to be discovered in Elysian Park. In 1984, two sisters hired Roy Rausch to explore in the park. The women recall their father searching for one of the fabled treasures when they were children. Soon they located a spot that seemed familiar.
Right up in there.
That looks pretty good. I realized that this was an excellent place to bury treasure because it was a place where you could dig a good-sized tunnel without being observed. because there was trees and hills. Well, the first thing that attracted my attention was on the side of a sandstone bluff were 3 indentations. The holes seemed to be rather symmetrical and rather smooth, and looked like it probably could be man-made. However, it was quite possible that they could be natural also. So keeping that in mind, I'm now looking around for some other signs and symbols. About 75 feet away, at the same level, on the side of the hill, I discovered some initials carved in the side of another rock.
Halfway between the 2 signs, Roy spotted exactly what he had been looking for: evidence of an old tunnel.
Hey, I think I found something.
It was not military, it was not a miner's tunnel, it was not for building, it was not an old toilet pit. It all came together. It was perfect. Obviously, it was a treasure shaft. There was no other reason for this hole being there.
It seemed simple. Remove dirt, claim treasure. The sisters said they had permits from park officials, but Roy suggested that the crew dig at night to avoid attracting rivals.
We got down about 25 feet, and I got a fairly good signal right in the center of the hole. We all got excited, because metal detectors don't lie in a situation like that.
The instrument had indeed detected buried artifacts, but they were not exactly what Roy Rausch was looking for.
We uncovered 2 very old flashlight batteries, the oldest flashlight batteries I'd ever seen. Even though I got no more readings with my metal detector after we uncovered the 2 flashlight batteries, we kept digging.
30 feet into the tunnel, another artifact, the frayed end of a very old, crudely made rope.
This was bad news. So after finding the 2 old flashlight batteries and the piece of rope, it was quite obvious that somebody else had already beat us to the treasure years before.
For Roy Rausch, it was a treasure hunter's worst nightmare. He was certain he had found the right spot, but far too late.
Well, whatever was in there was big and heavy, but somebody's beat us to it.
It was a combination of gratification and disappointment. The gratification was that we had correctly found a treasure tunnel and had excavated it. But the disappointment was that after all the time and money and work and effort that we put into it, we had nothing to show for our efforts except a couple of old flashlight batteries and a piece of rope.
Although he came up empty-handed, Roy Rausch believes there are still buried treasures in Elysian Park with a total value approaching $1 million. To test that theory, Unsolved Mysteries called upon experts from the National Underwater and Marine Agency, or NUMA, a nonprofit group that conducts both ocean and ground surveys. Their surface investigation was fully approved by city officials.
All right, guys, let's go.
The sensing device emits radar waves as it is dragged across the field. A cross-section of what lies underground shows up on this monitor. An anomaly, such as a cannon or perhaps a treasure chest, would appear on the screen as a discernible shape among the colors.
Now, if there's a foreign object in there, like maybe a box or a cannon, something doesn't belong there, we can see it. We have an image of it. Now, we don't know what it's made of yet, so we'll come back over and do electromagnetic survey to see if that cannon-type object is a log or really has some metal to it, or that box could have some gold or silver in it, or if it's just a wooden box.
After the survey was completed, computers translated the information into these cross-sections. Here is the first anomaly. Though open to interpretation, these marks could suggest the presence of a vertical tunnel running to a depth of roughly 30 feet. The second anomaly was detected less than 10 feet below the surface. The survey findings indicate that this anomaly is not only a solid object, but is also metallic.
If there is treasure here, I would prefer to see it stay here. I'd like to keep that mystery alive. I think it adds to the mystique of this park. I think it's something that people would probably continue to talk about in the future and help to keep the mystique of the treasure that might be in Elysian Park alive.
Representatives of NUMA believe the anomalies may be important relics from the city's history, links to its Mexican past. However, it is unlikely we will ever know for sure. Obtaining a permit to excavate in Los Angeles is even more difficult than finding a buried treasure. And digging without a permit is strictly against the law. Violators are subject to arrest and could end up in jail rather than on Easy Street. Next, a man searches for the American soldier who helped save his family during the final days of the Second World War. Recently, we received a rather unusual letter from one of our viewers. She called our attention to the moving story of a man she knows in Germany who's looking for someone here in the United States. Needless to say, we were both intrigued and anxious to help. So this past summer, we traveled to Europe and came back with a poignant mystery of kindness and compassion. For more than a decade, Siegfried and Marguerite Leyer of Molenbeek, Germany, have been searching for an unsung American hero. A young soldier who forged an unlikely friendship with Siegfried when he was just a small boy nearly half a century ago. 1945. The final days of the Second World War. For Germany's civilian population, it was a time of uncertainty and despair. Among the innocent victims was young Siegfried Leyer, whose neighborhood in Ludwigshafen was leveled by Allied bombers. Siegfried's mother immediately fled with her 3 youngest children. The Leyers walked 125 miles to take refuge with relatives in the village of Molenbeek. They quickly discovered that the hardships, especially for children, were universal.
It was very bad. I was 4 when the war ended. There was very little food to be had. We had to go with meal vouchers and buy food, but there wasn't much around.
In March of 1945, American troops rolled into Molenbeek. The German citizens had feared the worst, a conquering army bent on revenge. But instead they encountered a benevolent corps of occupiers who provided them with food and medical supplies. One of the GIs was a young man named Alexander.
Hey, you want something? Come here, it's chocolate. Come here, it's all right. Hey, kiddo. Can you say chocolate? Chocolate. Very good, very good. Where do you live?
He was sympathetic to me and friendly.
Yes. Well, you take this home.
If it hadn't been for him, perhaps I would not be alive today. He was a guardian angel for me.
Guten Tag.
Wer sind Sie?
I'm Alexander, American.
The guardian angel took it upon himself to track Siegfried down.
Was ich nehmen kann.
Soup?
Ist das Suppe?
Super, yeah. Oh, super, yeah.
Ist das für uns?
Alexander took a genuine interest in the Leyer family, and before long, the food shortages were a dim memory.
I'm not sure where Siegfried lived, but
He brought us food from the army. The same food eaten by them, we also ate.
Oh, das riecht gut. Kinder, wir haben
Oh, yeah, looks great on you. There you go.
He used to come by every day, if only to pick me up and take me to kindergarten, or to pick me up there later. Each time he would bring a little food.
The bond between the German child and the American GI grew stronger with each passing day. Alexander would often invite Siegfried to tag along on routine patrols around town.
You want to drive?
Want to drive?
Right.
Right.
Jeep.
Jeep. Okay?
Jeep.
Jeep.
Here, grab the wheel. There you go. Right, watch the road. Watch the road.
Wenn ich mit dem Auto fahren gedurft habe.
When I was allowed to drive with him, that was the most wonderful thing.
Ah, Ziggy, you're driving!
When I was sitting in the car and the other children saw me, they were perhaps a bit jealous because I was allowed to drive and they couldn't. I was very proud.
I don't know if you're going to understand what I'm trying to say to you, but I have to go.
Inevitably, the time came to say goodbye.
We may not see each other for a long time, for a very long time. I want you to
I was sad. Perhaps I would never see him again.
remember, Siegfried, that you are my friend.
As I think about it today, I was really sad.
Okay? Hey, good boy. Hey, good boy, Ziggy.
I have always thought about how he helped us and that I should in turn help other people. He was not obliged to us in any way, but he did it as a human being, out of human love.
Today, Siegfried has only one precious memento of Alexander. This photograph, taken in the spring of 1945. At the time, Alexander was approximately 20 years old. He would now be around 70. Siegfried Leyer does not know Alexander's last name. He does know that Alexander was part of an army unit that marched into Morlebach, Germany on March 27, 1945. While there, the soldiers were housed at the Grunebaum guest house. On a previous broadcast, we brought you the poignant story of the Cron family of Anawan, Illinois. Just before Christmas in 1948, Hilda Cron and 7 of her children had been evicted from their home. The only available shelter was the Henry County Jail. Eventually, the children were all separated, either put up for adoption or placed in foster care. 18 years later, 2 of the children, Marie and Raymond, managed to find each other. Together, they set out to track down the rest of the family. For 18 years, Marie and Raymond suffered through a series of near misses and false leads. Finally, in 1993, they did locate one sister, Carol. Then their story aired on Unsolved Mysteries. Incredibly, within a few hours, 2 more sisters and 3 brothers had been found. On July 9th, 1994, we were at Raymond's house in Houston, Texas, as the Cron family gathered for their first reunion in more than 45 years. Marie's dream had finally come true.
I've been looking forward to this for a long time because I didn't know if I would ever get to really meet him in person or not.
How you doing?
I feel that the love is, still there. It never went away. It's always been there, and I always wondered about them, and now I'll finally get to find out what's been going on with their life and everything and get reacquainted.
For the oldest sister, Betty Jane, the reunion was particularly emotional.
I knew that was Marie right away. Just by looking at her, I knew that was Marie. And that's when the first one I embraced. I was very happy to see them all. They all start coming to me, and I start going to them, hugging them and everything. So I was very happy, and I feel good. I really do.
For Raymond, the end of the search meant a new beginning.
I know you're going to be tired of me a week.
No,
we got a lot of catching up. Yeah, we do.
I always knew that their names and everything, but I just I didn't know how to go about finding them or anything. We hunted and we just got turned down every place we turned to try to find them. And then till this come along and it worked.
Join me next time. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery.
Thank you.